The statistics are well known. For the first time in history, more than half of us live in urban centres. And in the next few decades, the population of these centres is predicted to rise by 90%. This is an urban millennium. But is this something to fear or embrace? The gap between rich and poor has never been greater. Yet, the Millennium Goals are committed to halve the number of people living in absolute poverty by 2015, cut the under-5 mortality rate by 2/3 by 2015, and improve the lives of 100 million slum dwellers by 2020. Can it be done? And is the key sustainable urbanization through the creation of development freedoms for the urban poor? In thinking about agents of change for World Habitat Day 2002 in Brussels, Nobel laureate Professor Amartya Sen, the guru of poverty reduction, gave us his views on the urban challenge as discussed by Romy Khosla. 5 Freedoms, Agents of Change looks at the 5 key issues identified by Sen as barriers to change. It sees how in almost every case, people as agents of change have come up with strategies to improve their livelihoods and overturn the barriers. But the film also recognizes the importance of participation and partnerships between civil society, local authority and government if the global community is to reduce poverty and achieve an inclusive democracy.
Increasingly, the world population is turning urban, so that cities hold a very large proportion of the people. And that is not a question of meteorites coming and hitting us, about which we can do nothing. It's a question of deciding how to plan the city, the unfreedom of the city being balanced against the freedom of human beings living in society to choose the kind of world you want, in which the mega cities are up for contention. So I think we have to see that we have much more freedom to arrange atmosphere in which these unfreedoms could be avoided. I think that, in a sense, seemed to me to be a very central challenge.
Much of urban migration is driven by people desperate for a steady income. What most don't realize is that economic security isn't guaranteed. In Fortaleza, Brazil, widespread poverty and urban migration have spawned shantytowns or barrios. For many women, it's a vicious circle of prostitution and debt. To change their lives, they need training and access to funds, but most banks won't touch them. So they make their way to Banco Palmas, a bank with a difference. The bank was set up in 1998 with a 2,000 real loan, around $700, from Sierra Periferia, a local non-government organization. The town council sponsored 2 community members to run the bank. 4 years later, Banco Palmas has assets of over $10,000 and hundreds of clients. It's a true community fund.
Palmas really is different. First of all, if you go to a capitalist bank, they will check if you have a good credit rating. It's a big difference because Banco Palmas is a solidarity bank, where we believe in the individual as what he is, not as what he has.
Neighboring areas plan to take up the idea. By organizing itself, Palmera Barrio has also built bridges with local government, creating the potential for lasting change.
It was a barrio without basic assistance in terms of health and the environment, and the organization itself has started to demand general assistance from the government. Democracy has been revived.
As long as urban planning is seen as a kind of old-fashioned centralized planning, I don't think we'll get there. I think it's a participatory process. I think what we need for any of those decisions is the information which allows people to think intelligently and the question to be posed. It's part of the organization of society.
People participation is as key to creating social opportunities as it is in delivering economic facilities. In Orangi, a squatter settlement in Karachi, Pakistan, citizens transform their sanitation and living conditions from this to this, through coming together as a community to finance and build their sanitation systems themselves. The results were dramatic. In 10 years, infant mortality dropped by 75%, which can be directly attributed to the construction of underground sewers. Their efforts became globally recognized as the Orangi Pilot Project, a model that's been copied in several other cities in Pakistan. One of them is Faisalabad.
Politicians came here and for the vote, they say, we solve your problem. But there are 55 budgets are gone. Now we motivate the peoples that you do your job yourself.
21,000 meters of drain pipes have been laid, and over 4,000 households now have adequate drains.
Before we built our sewage line, there were bad smells and mosquitoes. Children got sick and couldn't run freely in the streets. But now we have planted trees where the open sewers used to run, and our children can play in a healthier environment.
People just need knowledge, skill, awareness, and they become empowered. And this is a real sustainable development.
I think where the basic needs perspective went wrong is to treat human beings as if they're patients rather than agents. You know, human beings are agents of change also. So if you have to decide what is to be done in the slums, it's not a question of finding out what the slum dwellers need. You have to find out what they would do if they have the freedom to do it, and how could you enhance that freedom?
Enhancing freedom demands transparency from those in authority who can help the people already acting as agents of change. In Jamaica, crime and violence are seen as the main block to a good society. The Area Youth Foundation, or AYF, is working for reconciliation by bringing youngsters from the warring communities together through drama.
The young are dying and leaving the old. And we in the Area Youth Foundation are saying that it can make a difference. We can be free of all the violence in our community. And that is what we are trying to do.
Many of the acts show a mistrust of the police. The corrupt and indifferent policeman is one of the stereotypes they act out. But they also want to change the stereotype. So, one of Kingston's senior police officers, James Forbes, is invited to meet AYF members to share their worries with him.
I think the problem is the police.
The need for people to negotiate with those in authority, like the police, is part of the transparency guarantee.
I think that what is unique about an inner city community is that they survive in hardship, which speaks to the strength, the inner strength of these people. They are some of the most resilient people.
Acting as agents of change, AYF also sees the need for dialogue with those high up in government.
We would love to meet our Prime Minister to say, we want to tell you what we are feeling, not, because we are from the inner city, you're not going to listen to us. I'm afraid to cycle and make it happen with me.
Some of these problems look in the abstract viciously difficult, but they may not be quite like that because, the things change slowly and adjust. The problem is to move to the next step. Once you're there, it's not a hard thing to run, it's to change the shift. But if you're changing over time, you could do it, but you of course have to do it with more intelligence, more humanity, more participation. But that's the first thing.
For the safety net of protective security to work in the face of natural disasters, those at risk, who often know how to survive, need to be certain that they won't be exploited in its aftermath by those acting as their very protector. Every year, around 20 typhoons hit the Philippines. Freedom Island in Manila Bay is home to some of the capital's poorest squatters. Belen Rosa is one of them, and she is fighting for her right to remain on this land. Those like Belen, who have no intention of moving, are afraid to evacuate when the typhoon warnings are given in case they are not allowed to return. She visits her neighbor, Rafael Nalonan, who had a lucky escape.
I was almost killed. I was blown away with the house.
All of the 5 freedoms are linked. As this example of protective security shows, Belen recognizes that by giving up her home, where she's lived since 1982, she will compromise her economic freedom. As well as $250, the Freedom Islanders have been offered houses far away in the mountains.
We depend on the sea. If they force us to move to the mountains, how can we make a living there? If you take a fish out of water, it dies.
I think democracy is so central to understanding what we want, why we want them, what we can do about it, and how we might proceed to do what we can actually achieve. First, the underlying condition, of course, is democracies at the national level. That's very important. Local democracy, which makes a big difference. For example, a third of the panchayat in India, the local government leaders have to be women. That has tended to change the nature of the decision-making.
Amar Kaur is her community's locally elected representative, a result of the 1992 law which devolved power to a local level through the panchayat. She's the first woman leader in a conservative society where parda is the norm and many women aren't even enrolled to vote. Amar's community tries its best to get their views heard by local officials. Amar often visits the government offices, and when he's available, the Assistant District Commissioner has an open door. Today, it's the lack of access to safe drinking water which is top of her agenda.
The water supply through the open channel is very polluted.
We have ensured that every storage tank is cleaned every 2 or 3 months. But now that you have complained for the first time, we will make sure it gets examined.
The women aren't convinced by the promises of help.
Our chief has gone to the water authorities at least 20 times. But when the problem isn't addressed, what can she do?
Despite the continued battles with bureaucracy, at least the panchayat system is helping to ensure women's participation at a local level. Globally, there's a long way to go. Only 14% of parliamentarians are women, and in 10 countries, none are female. But there's an overriding problem. Of the 81 new democracies, only 47 are fully democratic. South Africa is quite unique, as many countries in transition to democracy have lapsed back into authoritarianism. It's not surprising that 61 countries, with 38% of the world's population, do not have a free press.
There are really 2 different things happening. One is to use whatever participation that exists now, and then the other is to expand that level of participation, which is partly a matter of political democracy, but it's also a matter of media support, for example. I'm always amazed that there's so many courageous journalists, so little funds come into that, when the scarcest of all these things, people who are willing to give their lives and stand up and risk imprisonment or even death or torture perhaps, that is available in good measure, which is a great tribute to the view of human beings as quintessential agents of change. I think we should not be as concerned about it to be fatalistic, and yet concerned enough to do something about it, because things will go bad to us unless we do something about it. It's just what I'm saying is that it's within our power to make a better world, and if we don't do it, we have only ourselves to blame.